Yeah, we have actually a schedule.
Oh, good. Are we going to put it today?
No, I'm gonna,
Wednesday?
yeah.
I was fine. I was fine now. Would do, would do.
Would you just sign it? We don't have to.
Usually, I don't think we could actually put it on the,
It's
on
addictive.
July 7th.
Oh, yeah,
I don't have to be here.
it's amazing.
We put the approval, the formalities.
Absolutely. But I have to stop things and keep that.
Okay, greetings and good afternoon, everyone watching online and in attendance. We are here for a special school board meeting. Today is Friday, June 28th. It is approximately 4:36 p.m. I would like to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, can we please have a roll call?
Member Concha, Member King,
Here.
Secretary Trujillo,
Here.
Vice President Spray,
Present.
President Flores.
Here.
Thank you.
Item C is the Pledge of Allegiance. If we could please stand, I will go ahead and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item B is our land acknowledgement statement. It is respectful to recognize the unique and enduring relationship that exists between Indigenous people and their traditional territories. We acknowledge that we are on the historic homeland of the Red Willow people within the original territory of Taos Pueblo. This acknowledgement will oblige as a reminder of our ongoing efforts to respectfully recognize, honor, reconcile, and partner with the Red Willow people whose land and water we benefit from in this great valley today. Item E of the agenda is public comment. Do we have anybody online for any public comment? Anybody in the audience?
Sorry, President Mark, did we change that around? The agenda? Oh, no, I see, I'm sorry.
Not seeing any. We will go ahead and move on from public comment. Item F, approval of the meeting agenda.
I so move to approve the meeting agenda for tonight.
Second.
Thank you, Vice President Spray. Thank you, Secretary Trujillo. We have a motion to approve the agenda from the Vice President and a second from the Secretary. Can we please get a roll call?
Member King,
Yes.
Secretary Trujillo,
Yes.
Vice President Spray,
Yes.
President Flores.
Yes.
Thank you.
Item G is our district update. G1, HR vacancy updates. I don't believe we have Ms. Winters here, so Superintendent Lane, I presume you're going to be doing that?
Yes, sir. So we have been ongoing interviews at the different schools for the updates to our vacancies, especially our teaching vacancies. In fact, just this afternoon, I had a couple already bringing over their applications so we can start the process. And I have a little bit of good news that we're working on for making sure that we can offer our highly qualified teachers the position. So as a principal is making the recommendation, we will be able to offer the job offer, the letter that they receive, contingent upon completion of HB 128. So that way we can let our prospective candidates know that we have a job for them as long as they clear within the 30 days. But we're able to offer that job. Now, once it's cleared through House Bill 128, we're going to be able to get the contract signed within that time frame. So what that does is pretty much let our potential teachers know is if you get recommended by our principals and our staff, we will be able to offer you a position in the interim until we complete the HB 128. So it allows us as a district to comply with House Bill 128, but also it allows us as a district to not lose potential top-notch teachers to outside entities. So I wanted to make sure and update you all on that little progress that we're making.
Thank you, Superintendent. Does the board have any questions for Superintendent Layton regarding the vacancies within the district?
Do we have a lot of them?
Yeah, why are we on the numbers?
So the numbers, we have quite a bit that have retired and or decided to leave us, but I don't have the numbers with me right here. I will be having the numbers from our Director of Human Resource, Ms. Winter. She was trying to get those other contracts done by the end of our June 30th deadline. But I'll have those numbers for you soon.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, President.
With that being said, Superintendent, can we have a follow-up at our July 17th meeting? Absolutely. To kind of keep the board apprised of how, and the public, to how we're moving forward or kind of where we are at with filling the vacancies. I know it's been a bit of urgency and a concern from the board and also the public, but I think if we, to continue to keep updated on that. A lot of times we have these vacancies and we don't have people applying, so it's hard to fill them when we don't have the applicants. So I know we're doing our best to recruit our teachers and staff.
What I can tell you is that there's a few more positions that we've been able to procure. One of them is we've approved the supervisor for transportation, a supervisor for student nutrition, and also a receptionist and financial specialist who will be able to support both the front of our building to make sure that we greet all our visitors, but also to support our maintenance department when it comes to the requisitions and purchase orders. And this is a biggest one for us is they're also going to be responsible for ensuring that HB 128 applicants are being called and the surrounding school districts so that they can get those a lot quicker. That'll relieve the pressure from human resources. So that way we can get those candidates in. So we do have those three that picked up just this week. But the idea is to make our district a little bit more efficient. And especially with our building to have our guests greeted.
Right.
And that's where you're thinking, Dr. Layton, you want to have them?
So we're there's a corridor between the front door
Yes.
and the second entryway.
Yes.
So we're looking at placing them in between there. So that way anybody who comes into our building, they'll be able to be greeted at our building.
Very nice. Thank
But-
you.
You're welcome.
Okay, moving right along, item H of new business, H1, discussion and consideration to address teacher workforce housing, Dr. Antonio Layton.
So going back to that, I know we had a presentation last board meeting from Alivio regarding land. So to address the teacher shortages as well, we're looking at perhaps creating modulars so that we can address the housing, because once we get them here, of course, now we got to make sure that they can afford to live here. So want to see if we can consider perhaps modulars at one of our land areas so that we can provide our teachers and our staff some affordable housing for them. So that way, we can put that as also a recruitment tool that we'll have a place for them. So it's just something to look at that we're going to be looking into more of the weeds. How can we have it help financed by PED as well? And we're definitely going to be looking into see how we can make sure that if we can have affordable housing, then we can use it as a recruitment tool and address the shortages that we have in all areas, but specifically more for our teacher shortages.
This time, would the board like to discuss this topic? Board Member King?
So, have we talked in regards to finance? Did you have a chance to talk to?
We're still receiving some of the information because we did receive some information on more specific. Originally, we were thinking of one area from the state that we could provide the funding.
Right.
But it has since switched over to a different area.
Okay.
And so we're gonna now have to address or contact that department. We just received that information this morning from our attorneys, and so we should be able to start looking into how we can help get that financing into our district. And that'll kind of go along with the grant coordinator where we're working on, so that way we can pick up those pieces and get that, at least we don't have to put the full bill of it and see how quickly we can make this happen.
In discussion with Superintendent Layton, and also a brief discussion that I had with Board Member King. I think it's important for the board at some point in time, confer and decide upon, a piece of property that would best suit, teacherage development. One of the properties that, I did set my eyes on that maybe for the board to look at and consider as we move forward is we have some land out by the, golf course area or UNM house area, that I believe is in, the amount of like 40 acres of sorts. There is, infrastructure, in the area such as water and it's a sewer plant right there. I'm not sure if there is sewer, but, the possibility of, the septic installation would be something to look at. But in, for the board to think about, and I think it would be, and I know that we all are somewhat on the same page as to looking at, a piece of property, designating a piece of property, for that purpose, and then seeking funding, through various avenues. I think we should look at if we have any, cash reserves that we might be able to utilize along with grant funding, or funding through a PSFA, which is the Public School Finance Authority that I believe sometimes or may have the availability to provide funding for that. Something that, we could think about is, bringing in some modular homes, setting them in place
Go ahead, continue.
and, looking at utilities. Of course, we would need to have, sewer, septic, water, electricity, and, either propane or natural gas. I think in those 40 acres, we could start with, one or two, small modulars, and then as the district secures more financing, we can maybe continue to develop an area of property that could house, an array of teachers or their families. I think it's a very wise, action by the board to maybe move forward with that. And I would definitely request any kind of input or suggestions from the board. Secretary Trio.
President Flores, my thought would be to, maybe look at a developer. You figure that 40 acres and just to have a big plan for the 40 acres. And then, it can be scaled down to whatever we can afford, but at least we have the plan in place, the infrastructure in place to accommodate that, because usually the most expensive part is the infrastructure. But if it's planned and, it's all, up to code to meet every regulation out there, and that can be a given. And I think that would be a good start. But,
Definitely, Secretary Trio, and I think something for the board, obviously, as a board is where we get our ability to give direction to the superintendent. Being a facilities director with the county and the town and having worked on a couple large projects, it would be wise for the board to maybe consider through consultation putting out either an RFP or request for quotes from architects who can help us design that development schematic. I think that's what we've done historically with, the town of Taos or Taos County is select a piece of property, get the GIS mapping of the property, and have a schematic or a document that would show kind of where we would place the teacher housing. And also, with their expertise, we would be apprised of what would be needed. And they could also give us some preliminary budget numbers, so we know what kind of funding we need to go after. There's a few different architects in the area in Taos that we could work with, or we could also look, through CES or an architectural firm. But I think that would be a necessary first step. So we're not developers. We would need to have a development plan in place that, like you say, Secretary Trio, could be phased. Phase one could be two housing units. Phase one could be two housing units. Phase two could be another two. And over the course of, the next 10 years, actually set in course a plan for that. I think would be very important.
President Flores, if I may, two things. The funding would come from the public or could potentially come from public school capital outlay council. That was one of the questions.
PSCOC.
PSCOC.
It's called again.
SCOC.
Yes, Public School Capital Outlay Council. That would be a potential for housing, for funding, excuse me, for the housing. The other one is, I'm not sure if this is a possibility, but I know we do have some committees that board members are a part of. Maybe considering a housing committee, a workforce housing committee, so that we could keep ourselves apprised of the plan of action as it develops.
I mean, I think that'd be a really good idea, because those of us that have been on that committee are familiar with all, I think, 29 of the properties, and also then we can all talk about it in executive. At some point, we should do that when it gets to be done, but things that are appropriate in executive. But I hope we do this as quickly as possible. The need has been we could have used it 10 years ago. I think it's pretty exciting that we're talking about it.
I think one of the things that we need to really look at in regards to that is the access to utilities. I think that's going to be our largest expense, with those properties. If we can determine a location that has in close proximity the utilities needed, because we would need to tie in, bring electricity in, bring in water.
Definitely.
Modular homes nowadays run roughly, $200,000 to $300,000, I would say, or 150 at the low end. Then you take into account the utility and the infrastructure that's needed. We're probably looking, about $500,000 for maybe 1 or 2 units to be placed there.
Yeah.
One of the things that I wanted to talk to the board about, and I don't know how appropriate it is, but and where we're at, to see kind of where our cash reserves are. I know that it's very important not to tap into them. But if we have in excess a certain amount of money, I know that it's important and it's mandated by PUD that we keep a minimum in there. But if this is somewhat of an urgent need for our community and our children and our schools, that we do provide teacher housing because of the cost of living within Taos. And if there's justification and the availability of those funds within our cash reserves, maybe pull 200,000 or something of the sorts to help with matching funds. I hear you, that's very true.
That cash reserve is very specific for what it's a cash reserve, and it's mandated that you keep the cash reserve. But there is always and should always be an excess cash reserve. And that excess cash reserve is like money in your pocket. You could say, okay, we have our reserves, but what do we have in excess?
That's exactly.
In excess. And that's where the 399 came about at the county, because that was in excess of our ours was like a 312. So I had all these excess. So I developed a fund to be able to put that money in.
For projects.
For projects. So that could be something that we could do with our excess reserve monies. And again, if a school system, any system or organization is run efficiently, there should always be, that's why you have excess. And because you're counting your nuts and bolts, you're watching every dime that is expended, but not in a sense that it's meeting the needs. But it was amazing because it was above and beyond what we actually were using. And it worked. And to this day, it's become a very good tool. that whatever we have in excess, we put in there, and that's, I used to tell the commissioners, it's money in your pocket. We're not waiting for budget, we're not waiting for revenues, it's money in your pocket that you can use, but it can be saved for when the need comes. We can, it's a grant match for a project, and it can be used for that, or I don't know if the PSC, OC, if it requires any kind of a match, and usually these loan projects require a match. So what are you gonna match? What do you have to put on the table, you know, and so it's something to explore. I don't think it had ever been, maybe it's been in my other schools, but it could be a new one for us.
I know in the years past, at one point in time, the board did have in excess of quite amount of cash reserves, and there was a concern that if we didn't properly allocate or spend that money somewhere, that the PED could actually, you know, take some of that money for their usage. For some reasoning, I can't really speak to it because I don't have it off the top of my head, but if the board would be in agreement, maybe at the next board meeting, we can ask Mrs. Maestas if we could, you know, explore our cash reserves and what kind of mandates are tied to that and how we could possibly use some of that excess, depending on how large it is, for grant matching, and we may even have enough to get the project started.
But I have another thought, and on that note, even if you have this excess, you said something, that I caught that, let me think about it. I'm thinking too many things, and I'm sorry.
President Flores, one other thing, and I'm not particularly a fan of selling land that we own, but in the committee, we've identified some weird pieces that are just tiny and kind of oddly spaced and not usable for much of anything. We talked a little bit about recommending to the board sometime, that'd probably be an executive session conversation, but yeah. But there are a few pieces that are just triangular out of the middle of nowhere that somebody else might be willing to buy at fair market value, and then we could also use that money towards this project.
I think, yeah, you know, this is a great endeavor by the board. I think it's gonna take a lot of discussion in regards to, you know, the possible sale of land. That would need to be an executive session discussion per state, I don't know if it's state statute or not, but sale or transfer of land is something that is discussed in executive, but
Right.
the discussion of the development or utilizing of our funding for such a project, we can speak out here in the open, but I think it's a great endeavor and something that's, I want to compliment the board for bringing this discussion forward. I think it's a great initiative. It's really going to benefit the schools and the community. Another thing to look at is, I'm not sure, Superintendent, if you could look at our assets in regards to like modulars that we have throughout the district at our school sites. That may be an option also. I know that there's some modular classrooms that are, I know there's some at Rancho Elementary. There's like one or two at the middle school. Those could also be renovated, you know, they're already something we own. Renovation costs could be $50,000 or $100,000. I don't see them being that much, but you know, to renovate those units into living quarters with functional facilities, a kitchen and restrooms.
But even person thought is, even right there where they're at, it would be, I'm sure that the infrastructure is there. I mean, maybe just even not moving them, just to any location, just right there where they're at. Just maybe renovating them and maybe even water and is already available for them. Because if they have restrooms, if they have, we don't know what is tied to those facilities, but it's worth looking into.
Definitely. So we just need to figure out, I guess, the right avenues. I think it'd be wise though to get an architectural consulting firm on board They're usually the ones that, would help us through that and identifying, giving them the ability to look at our pieces of property, and seeing, you know, the utilities and the ability to, I would recommend, you know, kind of moving housing units offsite from our school sites, just to, you know, separate that from the school. I know we have like a double wide at Rancho Elementary where a police officer has had living quarters in there. We've had a teacher or two live there throughout the course of time, but if we could actually utilize one of our pieces of land for an actual teacherage, you know, teacher housing and like a small little subdevelopment or community that is just teachers and their families, would be great. Alderman King, you had?
Yeah, we can check with Chancellor Lieutenant too, what is their, you know, their master plan, so we can, you know, whatever. You know, we're not impeding on them because they're doing that telescope, you know, and they've got a little green belt they're gonna be doing, but that's a lot of land over there. And it's beautiful over there. I think it's very attractive. People, you know, I think that'd be it's a, you know, I think it's an asset. People go over there. I mean, it's gorgeous. You're going out to the country club, the hiking unit. You see forever over there, great vistas. I think it'll be a very good, and it makes sense. We know, HR Director Winters, he said it, you know, they recruited over in Durango, and we know that housing is our biggest,
Obstacle.
yeah, and with the vacancies we have, I mean, I think it's something we want to try to do sooner and later. And I don't think we have to be so, eventually, if it's bigger, but maybe we don't have to spend money with, you know, a lot of stuff being, those guys charge a lot of money, the architect. There's some things, even engineers, you know, we could check with who does manufactured homes, because it's really, that's the site, you know, they have to do. But we can try to keep this, because our district doesn't have a lot of money, you know, but we fortunately have real estate. Yeah, but that's a beautiful area. I mean, I think the UNM, that whole, and it's, you know, everything else is council, Spray said it's tight, you know, everything is, you know, like I talked to Olympio about El Prado, he's like, that's an area to go through, that's a driveway. But obviously that area is plenty open. I don't think people have to be on top of each other. Yeah.
Isn't fun? I do, if we can afford it. I like the idea of yours to have a master plan that we work toward. I think that's rather than doing it piecemeal or especially with infrastructure that's needed, it'd be great to plan on more units eventually and do the infrastructure at the beginning that would accommodate more, it seems to. Plus then we have a goal that we could fundraise for, that we can keep our eye on. I think it's nice to have a master plan, make
So-
people comfortable.
What we may need to do, what I recommended in
Mhm.
July, we have one regular board meeting, depending on what the agenda looks like. If we have time to sit and look at our properties and maybe determine, we may need to actually do that in executive, because there may come a point where the board says, you know, let's look at selling this piece. Or, I think the board needs to make a determination amongst ourselves as to what property we want to have that architectural firm look at, to start developing a plan for us. So once we determine which piece of land we want to work with, like
Mhm.
really single that piece of property out, then we could actually contract with an architectural firm to go out there, start making their rendition of what it would look like. Of course, we'd have to have, you know, access to the property. There would need to be driveways to the homes. Maybe there could even be at some point in time, you know, depending on how you situate it, a small little community area of grass and
Mhm.
playground for people's families and kids.
Well, that's why, excuse me, that's why, I suggested that, I don't know about a developer or an architect, it's planned out, it's a community. And there's a plan to it there, and you can add to it, but you have the structure there, you have the basic infrastructure done. And I think you can make it as nice as possible.
And I think as we discussed this, we're not the experts, but and I sat on the board long enough to where we've had, we could have a presentation done to us by, said professional, being an architect and so forth, that, you have these 4 pieces of property, and we looked at what it would take to do this development at this piece of property. You're looking at so much money over here, so much money, or what obstacles are in place.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think,
It's a start.
So,
Mhm.
maybe, superintendent, we could discuss, how we could maybe either have not that we need more meetings, but either include this in our next regular meeting, just to continue the discussion.
I've got it down in my notes about where we can, whatever guidelines we need to follow, but we can put it up there in our next executive session.
Okay, sounds good. Board happy with the discussion? Moving
Very.
forward?
That's great.
Very, thank you.
And there, just when you guys have a minute, there's a subdivision, a mobile home park behind Walmart up in the middle of it. And regards Camino de Medio that just got up. And, it's,
It's by the rodeo grounds.
Yeah.
By the rodeo.
adjacent, yeah, kind of at the northeast, excuse me, northwest. And it's, a lot of people don't know that you can buy a lot. They think it's a mobile home park, but you actually can buy your space. Yeah, yeah, and, the infrastructure is put in and, I'm not sure how many sites, but they brought 2 homes out now. That they're putting that up.
Okay, well, we'll continue the discussion. Moving on, item I is consent agenda. We have 3 items for, approval on the consent agenda. Item I1 is review and possible approval of minutes for the following dates, A through F. Item I2 is review and possible approval for the amendment to the forensic audit contract, not to exceed $220,000. That was presented in your board packet. And item I3 is review and possible approval of school bus operators contract for Felipe and or Jacob Cordova. Dr. Lane, if I could ask if you could just briefly discuss item 3 as to why it's back on the consent agenda for approval.
Correct, so this is just an update on the previous one, to include the taxes that were not previously there. And so it's just a continuation of the last one, but to get the correct amount that includes the taxes.
And then in regards to the amendment to the forensic audit contract, as the board is aware, and we have to be careful as to how we speak towards this. But we're aware that the forensic audit is still ongoing. We have since come to exhausting the amount in the previous contract in order for the forensic audit to continue to move forward to completion, hopefully, sooner than later, as we all hope for. We need to amend that contract and allow for additional funds to give the auditor the ability to continue to work on that. There is the amendment in the board packet for the review. Does the board have any questions in regards to any of the items on?
No, but President Flores, I'd like to say something, please.
Please.
Christina, these are beautiful. They're just beautiful. Thank you so much. You're not your favorite thing,
I know.
but you've learned that they're
Thank you.
beautiful. I was so impressed and so thankful for you
Thank
for
you.
the hard work you put in these.
Thank you. They
Great.
do take a lot of time.
I know they do. I know. So thank
Thank
you.
you.
Mhm.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you, President Flores.
So if the board doesn't, I'll give the board some time to review the items in the packet in regards to the consent agenda. The board have any questions regarding the item for the consent agenda?
Motion or?
Superintendent Dr. Layton, can I ask for a recommendation in regards to approval of the consent agenda?
Yes, President Flores, I recommend the consent agenda items one, A through F. I one, A through F, I two, I three, B, recommended recommended as presented. Be approved as presented.
Thank you, Superintendent. So we do have a recommendation from the superintendent for approval of the items on the consent agenda. I will go ahead and make a motion at this time to approve items I one, A through F, I two, then I three.
Okay.
We have a second from Vice President Cynthia. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Member King,
Yes.
Secretary Trujillo,
Yes.
Vice President Sprague,
Yes.
President Flores.
Yes.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is executive session, but before we enter into executive session, I do want to acknowledge our new executive secretary, Mrs. Anna Rayal, who is joining the district. She's sitting here with us for the first time. I want to welcome you to the school district and thank you for applying and seeking interest in the position.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you, Ms. Rayal.
Good luck.
So item J is executive session. There are two items for executive session. Item J1 is pursuant to section 10-15-187 of the New Mexico Open Meetings Act to meet with legal counsel to discuss pending or threatened litigation, specifically Jane Doe 1 versus Taos Municipal Schools et al. Case number 1-20 CV 01041 SCYJHR. Item J2 of executive session is pursuant to section 10-15-1H7 of the New Mexico Open Meetings Act to meet with legal counsel to discuss pending or threatened litigation, specifically Jane Doe 2 versus Taos Municipal Schools et al. Case number 122 CV 00590 KWRJHR. At this time, I'll make a motion to enter into executive session. It is 5:15 PM.
Second.
We have a second from Vice President Cynthia. Madam Clerk, can you please call for the roll?
Member King,
Yes.
Secretary Trujillo,
Yes.
Vice President Sprague,
Yes.
President Flores.